my gosh, we're live. We are. Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday at 3:00 Eastern Standard Time, I may add. I am Wendy Stuart Kaplan.
And I am Tym Moss. Hi.
And we are bringing to you live from Pangea Restaurant on the Lower East Side, 2nd Avenue between 11th and 12th. And our show is If These Walls Could Talk. And I can't think of a better location to have a show like this.
Exactly. If these walls could talk.
Oh my God, would they ever? And speaking of Pangea, just first up, we want you all to know that February 14th.
Yes. Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. Mm-hmm. That's a Sunday night for those of you who haven't got it memorized. And if your lover hasn't told you that it's a Sunday night, you just slap them and tell them. But we will be open here inside 25% capacity.
Yes.
Which is really,
it's going to
really
reopen. Reopen for indoor dining here in New York City on Valentine's Day.
God, what a blessing. How was your week, Tim?
Good. So busy that I honestly can't remember anything I did.
No, I know this happens to me. And what has happened, I think Tim can speak on this too. We still try and do live stuff out there when we can, but we do a lot of virtual stuff too. And in my brain, doesn't the live stuff and the virtual stuff just start to overlap?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can't remember who you did what with or what you did where with or... Yeah. But we survived the snowstorm.
Yes, we had a snowstorm. That's one thing we did.
Okay, and one thing Tim did that was so fabulous, and you can probably find it on Tym Moss on Facebook. Tim did a snow dance. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Tym Moss is a choreographer.
Whenever New York City gets a big snow, it has to be over a foot of snow. I always go outside and do a snow dance and just dance in the snow. I love snow.
So over a foot. My God, you're picky. You can't do it in
no, it's 6 inches. Please, that won't even cover my shoe.
Won't even walk out the door for 6 inches.
And that's why for the past, I haven't done a snow dance for about 2 or 3 years.
There you go.
Because we've never had any big storms.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people were watching and wondering why hasn't Tim done a snow dance in 2 years? So
I've had people ask.
So we answered that for you. So
you just got the vaccine.
I did. Which is why we're together. I actually had the second vaccine. So
the second one. Oh, I didn't realize. Oh, good.
Yeah, because when they opened it up, that you had like 3 hours to get an appointment, and I'm ready. I'm rocking. I'm rolling. I'm moving. I'm shaking. However, just so everybody knows, and this is fact, you can still catch COVID even with the vaccine. You still need your mask, but as the numbers start to go down, hopefully everything, show them the purdy one. Hopefully, eventually it'll become just like the flu. Yes. So we hope everybody out there is feeling good today. We are going to share the most incredible feel-good show with you today.
Absolutely. Speaking of rocking and rolling.
Moving and shaking.
Our guest today is remarkable. I've got so many notes here. We've both got so many notes here about him. He was saxophone and the rhythm guitar with Pink Floyd, with Toto, Supertramp. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get bigger than that, much bigger than that. But why don't we bring him in? Let's please welcome to If These Walls Could Talk. Welcome the fabulous and wonderful Scott Page.
Fabulous and wonderful. Wow. Clap for yourself, Scott.
We love Scott Page.
Thank you so much for the very kind opening. It doesn't get bigger than this. Maybe a little bit bigger.
This is as big as it gets, right? But thank you, Scott, for being here with us today and telling us about your beautiful weather in Los Angeles. I hate you.
Yes. So
it's real rough here today. It's about 72, 73 degrees. Sun's out. It's beautiful.
How are you?
Hey, but we had rain the other day.
I heard.
Good. You need to have rain. You need to suffer a little bit, like we suffer here. So I'm just going to dive right in with a little factoid I found out about you. Besides having a really happy childhood, your father was the head musician on the Lawrence Welk Show.
Well, he wasn't. He was one of the musicians. Not
he
he was a woodwind player. Yeah, I grew up on that show. That was my life for my first.
That was do you remember that show?
Oh God, yes.
Oh my God!
Yes.
All right, I'm dating myself, but that
14 years. 14 years. My dad was in that band
with Bubbles. They used to start the show up with the Bubbles.
No, he was a reed player. So he would
woodwind,
play
saxophone, clarinet, oboe, English horn,
oboe. Right. Wow. So he versatility of instruments and knowledge of how to play instruments runs in the family.
Yep.
Huh?
That was his thing. He was he was known as a doubler, right? So that's
they call that a doubler when you can do a couple of. Are you a doubler?
I was a doubler too. Yeah, I was a doubler.
Or a
like my dad.
tripler. I think you're a
I
tripler.
worked. You know, I play guitar and I play saxophone and
right
those things.
But Scott, you were on the Lawrence Welk show, weren't you?
This is true. I mean, this is like, you know, it's really interesting is I actually, my biggest claim to fame, and one thing that I have that nobody else in the world has, I'm the only person that has actually played on the Lawrence Welk show and played in Pink Floyd.
Yes.
Get out.
Yes.
I totally love that.
Right?
How
about that? That's like my claim to fame.
Like, that's really amazing, right?
Do you remember what song you played? It was on the
of course. I played that show quite a few times through the years.
Really?
Every year they would do a Christmas show where they bring the families on.
Oh,
yeah,
so
cool.
I would do something. I played trumpet at the time, and I played a little trumpet song. We do Outer Space Santa, you know, some songs, great songs. Did that, and then a couple times I did shows with my dad where we did a number. Where actually one of them, we actually both water skied together, and my dad played 2 clarinets, and I played my trumpet. And
wow,
we
water skiing.
And we did By the Sea, by the Sea.
By the beautiful sea.
There you go.
Okay, you got us going now.
That's
so you grew up in a musical family.
Oh yeah, very much so. My dad was actually when I was 1 year old, I was actually traveling with Judy Garland, believe it or not.
Oh my God.
My dad was playing in her show that she was doing at the time.
Wow.
And then, you know, so I've been around the music business all my life. And, you know,
it's in your blood.
My father's been was also a serial entrepreneur. We had boat businesses, lighting businesses, candy businesses.
Wow.
Donut. You had donut business.
We had 26 donut shops called Bill Page Donuts.
My goodness.
And the sign was interesting because it was a saxophone with donuts blowing out.
Oh, I love that.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it was crazy. So I've been around, you know, pretty much, you know, kind of a business entertainment space all my life. And that's kind of, I followed that same direction. I guess
I was just going to say, cause you have combined, you've got such varied, your resume has got to be the most diverse of any I've ever seen.
You know, it's interesting. I look back now. It's so funny when you look back because you don't think about it when you actually are doing it, right? And then now I'm looking back and I'm going, wow, what a crazy ass life I've had. I mean, just the things that I've been part of.
Well, one of the things that seems to be interesting to me, you know how some people are constantly trying to manipulate and make things happen? You seem like you just fell into this and fell into that. And why do you think that happened for you?
You know, I think big part of it is just curiosity. I've been very curious.
I love that.
You know, I think that's really important. You know, and I've always been, you know, I really got lucky with my parents, right? I won the lottery. I had the best parents you could ever imagine. My dad, we did everything together. I mean, you know, we built my first skateboards, we surfed, we played golf, we tennised, we snow skied. I mean, we just did all that stuff together. And everything he did, he would always take me on. So I was always with him when he was doing these businesses and stuff. So I was there helping. And I mean, I was actually with the donut shops. I became such a good, good donut chef that like my dad would wake me up at like, you know, I remember sometimes at like 4 a.m. in the morning, one of the 26 shops, the cook didn't show up and the catering trucks were coming. So he'd wake me up and says, before you go to school, can you go cook donuts over here? So he would drive me out and I would make donuts and then make sure that the catering trucks got all the donuts and run off to school. So,
wow. Yeah, you know what I love so much about the way you're telling it though, you know, because you have a work ethic. That work ethic was developed really early on. Mm-hmm. And when you're telling this story, it's a family story, right? Yeah. There's no resentment or anything. You can tell you grew up in a really positive, supportive atmosphere.
Oh yeah, big time. You know, my mom was the kindest human I've ever met. Aww. And you know, just over kind. I actually would say almost overboard at times. But yeah, and my dad was just, you know, everybody loved my dad because he was just a very straight guy, honest, never tried to take any advantage of anybody, did anything. And we just always just kind of worked. Not that we had, you know, at the time was, you know, an incredible, weren't multi-millionaires. I mean, we lost. I mean, we went up and down.
Right.
You know, when you're
Right.
an entrepreneur, you have
Absolutely.
a few wins, and you have a few downs, and, you know,
Yeah.
we go through that. But, you know, for me, it's really, I've really learned that there's only one thing that matters, and it's the ride, right? The outcome doesn't really matter.
That's
Nothing
so
else
cool.
matters other than just, you know, the experience. Because I go every time we talk with anybody, anytime I do these shows, I always bring up this one thing, because I think it's so important for people to understand, is this: the only thing that is real is us talking right now. Everything else is an illusion. 2 minutes ago is an illusion. 2 minutes from now is an illusion.
Absolutely.
So the only thing there is just this, right? And
what we're having right now. But Scott,
Amen.
what about the parallel universes? Let's go down that rabbit hole.
well, you can. That gets another whole world. You know, so you know, consciousness is my favorite subject on the planet. So I mean, we can definitely go down all those rabbit holes.
all those rabbit holes. But I want to
But
get
also, but
yeah.
just like you were saying, it's basically living in the now.
Yeah.
You have to. I mean, because
Right.
that's the only place you can
Right.
have any effect. And people don't realize that there's really only one moment. It's always the same moment. I can't get
Right.
up and go over there and leave the moment.
Right.
It's always the same moment. So it's really just a different frame of kind of the way you
And
frame life in general. So I try everything I can to just, every step that I take, I make sure that it's good. I'm constantly checking in myself, like, how am I
Right.
feeling right now? What's going on? Because what'll happen is a lot of times you could be just like sitting here. I'm sitting here and I could be suffering, like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm going to pay my bill. Just going through this whole insanity that we go in our heads. But
Beating
when you stop
up
yourself,
with your head, I
Yeah.
call it.
yeah,
Yep.
when you stop and you say, well, where am I? I'm sitting here talking to you with a glass of, everything's actually okay.
Mhm.
I'm not what's going on in my head. So
But-
I try to really focus on that concept. You know,
Yeah. But your upbringing, I mean, that's so remarkable, because so many people are brought up, you have to grow up and do one thing. You've got to find out one thing you're good at and do that one thing, stick with that for your entire life and work
Right.
your whole, you know,
Yeah.
and you were brought up with more of a mentality of peaks and valleys, that life goes up, life goes down.
And life goes
Try
on.
this.
Life goes on.
Right.
Life goes
Try
on no
this.
matter what.
Try
That's
this,
it.
try that.
Good point of view.
Yeah.
Now, you when you went to school, you studied architecture, which
Correct,
that's
yeah.
very interesting to me in terms of what you're doing now, and we'll get to that. But what made you decide to study architecture?
You know, I got into design. I liked design when I was a kid, right? So all the way through school, I was always in drafting class, and I had I was pretty good. Remember, we had to use a pencil and a pen in those
Right.
days. Now it's all on computers.
And the
But, you know, we had to
protractor.
like really worry. And we'd learn all these techniques of how to, like, we had to turn the pencil as you were drawing a line, so you keep the line real nice and crisp and dark. And we learn all those kinds of things. But, you know, I really liked design a lot. I wasn't really into music. I took up the trumpet as a kid, and I played more for my dad actually at the time, because he was being such a musician. He would always encourage me, you should keep playing, because then you can pick up some gigs on the weekend, and, it's just good for you to have music, understand it. So I did it, but I didn't really care. And it wasn't until I was in, actually, when my dad actually started amplified instruments, so the first saxophones that had a microphone on, which was actually a hearing aid, because a hearing aid is basically a microphone. And it was put on, and he started that with the horns. And then he was actually one of the developers with Brad Plunkett that invented the wah-wah pedal, which was the famous music, Jimi Hendrix, everybody still today, one of the most, revered, still used today guitar pedals of all time, right? It's, it just won the Hall of Fame.
I like to say it, the wah-wah pedal.
The wah-wah pedal. It was originally called the Clyde McCoy wah-wah pedal. And Clyde McCoy was a trumpet player, and he used to play womp, 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 womp. He did that thing. So my dad said, Brad, I want to make my clarinet sound like to do that. Can we do that? And that's how he built that thing. And I remember when my dad brought that home the first day when they had built the prototype, and I had my trumpet and I played in. I can see myself in the living room right there going through that at that moment in time. And, I used to own that original wah-wah pedal. I lost it someplace. I have no idea. It got moved or something. I lost it. But that's a, crazy time. But all this entrepreneur stuff that I went through with my dad really made it interesting for me. I think that's what really got me.
Well,
because I love business and I love art, right? I mean, I love the
Right.
two. And so
Now,
I try.
did you develop your art or music along the way, or was that something that was just always kind of there? Like, you know, with your father, with the Lawrence Welk, you absorbed that style, and then Judy Garland, you kind of absorbed that style. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or,
I mean, yeah,
did you
you know,
study
obviously I
music?
picked up a lot from my dad, but again, it was from the entrepreneurial side too, because
Interesting.
I love the concept of business and art. And I actually, you know, I teach startup because I'm on my fourth one. And I was
Mhm.
actually teaching at USC, the college. I did a semester there. I teach a thing called SPACE, which stands for Story, Plan, Army, Conversion, Education. It's basically a business formula.
Interesting.
And so, you know, I just love that. And one of the things I always teach is that, you know, first of all, I teach a lot of artists. I go, is this a business or is this a hobby? Because
Yeah.
businesses make money, hobbies are fun, and you do
Yeah.
it. But if it's a business, then
Absolutely.
we have to think of our fans are not fans anymore. They're really customers. And I
Yes.
have to start thinking about how to treat them like customers in a sense, because in order to do what I need to do, I've got to generate revenue.
Mhm. And
So,
have repeat customers keep
Right.
coming back.
yeah, right. So I basically have been a big fan of, you know, like I said, I'm on my fourth startup company. I love business, and I try to teach them, all the artists, that you have to love. There's an art to business too.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
try to combine the art of business and the art of the art to make them one thing, right? So everything I do, particularly, I try to I look at the business models. If I'm going to go make something, I go, well, what's the business model if I'm going to go make this? I mean, am I making this for myself, or am I making it for a purpose of, you know, generating revenue for, or
What's the
whatever I'm trying to do? So
Right
I just think it's important.
But now, don't you agree that business has changed from the 70s and the 80s
Oh yeah,
to
big
the
time.
2000s
yeah.
and 2020s? It's night and day, right?
This thing right here.
Yep, you can do
thing
you can
Yeah.
run
changed
your
everything.
business on that
my
thing.
my office, which I'm, you know, this is our office. I'm curious how when you're teaching at USC, the reaction that you get to artists, because there's so many kids start bands like when they're in high school, and I'm curious if the generation now who's in their 20s is more open to thinking about art as a business, as opposed to, like, say 15-20 years ago, it wasn't quite seen that way. It was about being the artist.
Yeah. So here's the thing, I was actually, I have to say, I was pretty disappointed in when I was teaching, mainly because
Yeah.
there was very little curiosity, and these things were controlling people so much that they couldn't think outside. It's like free thinking is going away.
I agree.
And I mean, it's really pretty rough. And anybody out there listening, I want to recommend one thing that everybody goes watch is Social Dilemma. You can get it on Netflix.
It's on Netflix right now. Did you watch it
No, I
yet?
haven't.
That's on my list.
No. You must go
it's
watch that. That's like needs to be everybody here, especially if you have children, whatever. It is very, very important, because what's basically happening is the algorithms that are basically taking over. Remember, whoever controls the algorithms controls the people. If you control the media, you control the people. And what's happening is all this behavioral science and marketing and things that are being done are now being used on us. And one of the things you realize when you watch Social Dilemma is, like, on all these free sites that you're on, Facebook and stuff, well, you're the product.
Yeah.
That's right. They're selling you, and they control all the information and the data and all of that stuff. And, right now, like, people have brought, like, all their friends onto the networks, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, you can't reach everybody unless you start paying for ads.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
You brought everybody together. So Social Dilemma is really important because it really shows you the insights of how you're being sort of controlled and manipulated. And it's really important for kids. I mean, I'm very much against children, I see parents putting these things in their kids' hands at young ages to make them. And it's just, I really think it's a very sad thing, because I think it's having a detrimental effects, and it's really controlling people from free thinking. They can't free think anymore, because no matter, even if you put which is what's fascinating, you can put facts in front of people and they will still not believe it.
Yeah, no,
agree.
that's absolutely true. So the answer to that, what do you think the answer to that is? Because we're pointing to our devices, right?
I'm an addict. I use it all day long.
Right. So well, we all are, but with
But
kids, they're learning, and everything that they're learning now, it's all electronic. And I'm sure you've heard this, as we all have. Their brains are getting wired differently.
Oh, big time. No, this is definitely changing everything, because now you don't need to like really think or whatever. You can just Google it and you get the information. And so, I mean, there's pros. The positive side of this is incredible, but there's also a very dark side that, unfortunately, when it gets in the hands of people, we're seeing some, from my point of view, some real destruction. Because don't you find it fascinating that now friends can't talk anymore?
Right.
People aren't.
Hello. Now, this girl is. I absolutely, it, and I apologize. I do everything, but I apologize to people, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm calling you, but I need that to connect, especially if I'm doing a. I didn't call you, Scott, but
you can call me anytime
already. But I have to do that. I have to hear your voice. I have to make some kind of human contact. And I think everybody needs to do that, because we're going to lose that ability if we don't.
Well, we're already losing it. I go ride with my friend. His two kids sit in the back seat and they text each other. They don't even talk. They're sitting right next to each other.
Right.
Yep.
And so you got to start wondering. And, I mean, I think what's happening is it's completely taking over people's thoughts, and they can't stop and basically smell the roses anymore.
That's just what I was going to say. Is it seems it started with texting and communication and this and that, but it almost gets to the point where the kids are using this as life experience.
Yeah.
It's like, what is it? It's like, what is it like to ride a roller coaster? Well, let me Google it and see, and there's a video of me going up and down and up and down. That is not riding a roller coaster until you sit your butt in that chair and strap yourself in and feel the tick, 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 and the drop of that first. You have not ridden a roller coaster.
Right.
No, you got to taste it to really understand what it is.
Okay, so now that we've opened up this can of worms, your company, Think Experience, okay?
Yes.
It's all virtual. Let's talk about that.
It's not. It's actually not all virtual. It's basically a combination of three things.
Let's talk about that.
A live event. So we still have a live event, but we're really gearing it towards the kind of more of where live events are going to be, especially for a while. We're not going to be opening up and thousands of people are going to be pounding into rooms. So it's really taking advantage of that, but also live streaming, but it's really thinking about the two-way stream, the real-time two-way, because that's what's interesting to me. Is it's one thing to be able to send information out like watching TV or watching YouTube. It's another thing is being brought into the show and being part of it, right?
Well, I experienced that being immersed in your show when we did that concert.
Right.
I have to tell you, it was completely incredible to me.
Oh, thanks. Well, that was a first try what we did.
It was so amazing.
Yeah, and then the third thing that we've added in is because I can't hand you something through the screen, but we now are so used to delivery services. So what we do with our show with Live In is we deliver an experience to you in a box that ties into the actual live show.
Isn't that cool, right?
That is so cool.
So that way it becomes something we can experience together.
That's
where
so
I have something, you have something, and we do something. It makes it physical.
Something.
Yeah, so we're saying virtual plus virtual equals physical.
Love
and
it.
That's how we're looking at it. And so we were just getting ready to shoot our pilot, which you saw our first little test run, because what we did there was we had actually put 18 80-inch monitors around the band and then brought the audience onto the band. So they were like 5 feet away from us, 10 feet from us right there. And so everybody was like in the front row, and we were able to communicate and, test some things out. Now there's some challenges to really doing that right. And that's part of where we're trying to kind of innovate in that area. And, we just filed a couple patents on some ideas on how to do this stuff in a unique way. And so we'll see. But I'm, personally, again, as an entrepreneur that's been, doing this for years, I have to say that right now, I've never seen a more exciting time for an entrepreneur, because the whole deck has been shuffled, and there's all these new, opportunities, problems to solve, right? Because that's what entrepreneurs do. They solve problems. Absolutely. And there's no question the problems are incredible now, and new models, and you're seeing the big guys are getting shaken up. So for me, I see this as just a great time. And, you know, because of this, listen, the thing about this that changed everything is, number one, it's the horsepower, the bandwidth, and the storage is incredible, and the communications. And now I have a direct link to people all over the world, because whoever owns the audience wins. If you own the audience, it wins. And what's really important is I can take the order. I can take your credit card. I can take whatever, and I can get paid. So we're moving into a direct to consumer world, and it's really moving into kind of the niches, or hives. I call them hives. And the motto is, if you want to survive, you have to build a hive.
Yeah.
And what's nice about this model is it really doesn't take that many people to build something. There was Kevin Kelly from Wired Magazine did this thing that was, he coined it, it's called 1,000 True Fans. And a true fan is somebody that will spend $100 a year on you or whatever you're selling. So I have 1,000 people, there's my first $100,000 in revenue.
Yeah, right.
So my whole model when I teach my space course is about building a repeatable model, starting small, even forget about the 1,000. I go down, let's get the first 100 to 200 people to do a repeatable model. Pay me, kind of make it go. Once I have that, what I'm selling, because you can't sell music anymore if you're a musician. There's no place to sell it.
Exactly.
And streaming business doesn't really work. So it's really about, you know, what can you sell? And it's the relationship, the lifestyle, kind of the educational piece, or an experience, right? Those are the things you can sell.
So absolutely, an experience.
Absolutely. Well, you're watching If These Walls Could Talk with hosts Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss.
Yay!
We are talking to the amazing and innovative and ridiculously talented Scott Page.
Yay!
You're too kind. You are too kind.
What you were talking about, as you are the CEO of Think Experience.
Yep.
And why don't we take a quick look at one of the videos from that?
Oh yeah, and I think Wendy, you're even got a little cameo.
Oh, my cameo! I'm going to watch for my cameo.
We got it.
Welcome to the future. Come on.
This is so amazing.
Wait a minute. It's not just a one-way stream anymore. It's a two-way.
That's my dad right there. There he is, the man. Happy Father's Day.
Rockin' live, big time.
That was so
Love
cool.
it. I saw
So that's our little promo for our show thing. Yeah. And you were there. I saw you. You were there.
I heard myself say it was incredible.
Thank you for that wonderful thing.
Well, one thing that I mean, we've gotten off on so many
Tangents.
things. Yes, which I love. There's so much about you. That's why we're going to have you come back on for even a second show event.
Anytime.
To cover more.
Oh my God,
but we've got to talk about your musical history.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God. So as far as like major bands or major groups, was Supertramp, was that your first
Oh, actually, I played with a variety of bands for the years when I was
Right.
growing up, kind of doing, playing studios. I was in the first kind of real big gig that I had where we toured was with Seals and Crofts.
Oh,
I
That's
don't
what
remember
I
seeing
love.
or Summer Breeze and all those, and that was at the
Yeah.
height of their career. So that was my first real kind of, I would say, world tour, right? Was playing with them
Wow.
during that period of time. And then, I was in varieties of bands. I was in Mick Fleetwood's band, The Zoo. I was, I played with everybody from Chuck Berry to,
My
to
God.
James Brown to, it goes on and on as playing as a musician.
Was this just that you were in that circle and people knew you, so they would?
Yeah.
Well, it's really interesting. It's like, all these gigs that I've, got, it's always word of mouth. And obviously we had no
Right.
social media and stuff like that before.
Exactly.
And so it was, you'd hang out at the club, you'd meet somebody at the club or wherever it is. Like Supertramp came through, a guy was sitting in the back of the club for months and months. He'd come every week when we played there. I had this band, and so I ended up talking to him and asked him what he said. Oh, I play drums. I'm in this band called Supertramp, and they were just making a record at that time, and we just became buddies and didn't really think of it. And then a few years later, I got a call. I was actually playing with Diana Ross. Believe it or not, I was in Las Vegas when I got the call. And it was Bob Siebenberg, who was the drummer. And he says, hey, we're looking for somebody. So on my day off in Vegas, I flew to LA and then auditioned for that and then got that gig and, did multiple tours with them for years and played on 3 of their records and, did all that stuff. But then, and then what's interesting is Dave Gilmour from Pink Floyd came and played on the Supertramp record. So we were there in the studio that day. So I started talking to him, and I had a gig that night where we played down the street from Rick Davies' house with this band I have called the Hang Dynasty. We still have it. It's basically made up of, great player Lee Sklar from, Phil Collins' band, the guy with the beard, and, just Jeff Baxter from the Doobie Brothers and a whole bunch of us. And we played. So we were playing that night, and I invited Dave down. He come out and hung out with us and did all that. And then I invited him to a show I was doing the following week, and he ended up showing up at that. And then the next day after I did that event, he called me up and said, hey, we're come to play on the record. I went and played on the record. And what was funny was I really knew very little about, I knew nothing about Pink Floyd at the time. I mean, nothing. And so when he called me, I went and did the record, and I came back, didn't think anything of it. And then a couple days later, he called me and said, hey, we're getting ready to go tour again. We want to put the band together. Would you want to join the band? And I said, nah, I don't know. I've got to think about this, because it was 2 years on the road. It's like somebody calls you up and says, hey, you're going to be you're going away for 2 years.
Right.
It's like
a commitment.
It's a big thing. And I didn't know anything about Pink Floyd. So I called my friends up and I said, I played on this Pink Floyd record. And the guy goes, whoa, you played on a Floyd record? I said, yeah, I did that last week. And then he called me up to go, join this band and go on this tour and stuff. And it's 2 years. And I said, I didn't know. And he says, dude, you got to do that. Yeah, you must. I said, well, really? I mean, I said, all right. So that night I remember going to Tower Records because it was open 24 hours.
I love Tower
Right, 24 hours a day. So I went out there and I picked up a few Pink Floyd records, came back, listened to them, kind of understood. And then I said, okay, everybody talked me into it. So I ended up doing it. And the next thing I know, I'm in Canada out on the tarmac of the international airport. We're in a big giant hangar out in the middle. That's where we rehearsed out there. And I walk in and there's giant stage and flying pigs. And, I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Amazing.
And the next thing I know, we're there. So
wow.
that's
I mean, there is so much you just talked about, but
I have a question now, because you mentioned touring, and you're a young guy, great looking guy. Did women throw themselves at you? Did you have groupies?
Let me put it this way. I've had more fun than any human being, and I'm alive to talk about it. I don't know how that's possible.
Okay, that's what it
I don't know how it's possible to be alive. I mean, when you're young and you're having no, forget it. It was like a
time of your life.
It's like so strange, because it's such a, I always kind of laugh because, people make a big deal. You're a Pink Floyd. And I'm like, it ain't that big a deal. Trust me. It's not that big a deal. But people get so hung up on that. And one thing about Pink Floyd, which was so fascinating, I mean, that brand worldwide is massive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the most powerful thing. We used to laugh because, you know, your laminate pass, your tour pass you wear, you know, basically get you in and out of the place. And we used to laugh because we would say that tour pass was the key to the universe, because you could go to a restaurant and they'd say, sorry, we're sold out. We don't have any room. You take the pass, you go like this, boom, right this way, sir.
Best table in the house.
Yeah, really.
In the house, you know, so it was fascinating, the power of that. And, you know, for me, actually, I shot 130, about 140 hours of Pink Floyd video on that 2-year tour. And I've been going through it again, and it is a trip because I really focused on the fans. It was just amazing to see fans. We would start the tour, and we'd be wherever I forget, we were Toronto, and we'd come out of our hotel room, and there'd be people standing out there with records to sign. And then next thing I'm in the south of France, and I come outside and those same 6 people are standing there.
Yeah.
And the next thing I'm in Japan, and those same people are standing there wanting their records. And they would take off. They would save all their money up so that they could take 6 months just to follow the band around. And everywhere you go, they'd be there. So the fans, fans were incredible.
Those are your true fans.
The real true fans.
The true ones, the ones that you were talking about before. Those are true fans.
Yeah.
Now, backing up to what you were talking about earlier, because there was so much information in there with all of the different, like, legendary performers or musicians that you were just hanging out with. And, we're going to go down and I'm going to play with this group. And you would play a small club. And then what was it, like, within the year? A year later, when you're with Pink Floyd, walking into the most massive stadiums that are sold out with people moving all of this stuff and setting up these huge stages, and it
was massive. I mean, there was like,
that's such a leap.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I mean, what was so interesting about Floyd is, I remember we had our passes, right? You know, 1, 2, 3, and I'd see people that were there had 147. Right. Like, it's like there's 150 people moving this giant, like, circus around the world. But you know, what was actually really interesting is, I mean, they're fun. You know, it's fun to play those big gigs. You know, it's interesting, and you see yourself. I mean, it's crazy. But really, the most fun we had is Pink Floyd. We called ourselves, after the show, we were the Fishermans with a Z, and we would go play clubs.
Stop it.
Enter a different name with it's genius.
Stop it.
How
cool is
And
that?
so they would, the promoters, after we did our stadium show, for afterwards, they would set up a small club, and they wouldn't tell anybody really who it was or whatever. And we would show up there, and then the word would get out, and the place would be slamming.
Packed, right?
Those gigs were really fun.
That would be amazing.
The fans are like 3 feet, 4 feet from you, and you're playing, you know, and getting to honk the women. Hey, baby.
Well, that answers the groupie question for me, then, doesn't it, Scott?
I know, it's horrible.
Wow. So you were, how long were you on the road with Pink Floyd?
We did that with that tour. I was 86 to 90 something. I guess 86, 90 something. So, but we were out 2 years on that particular
amazing
space. Yeah. And then I started my company, and everything started to take off, because I started actually with the producer of Pink Floyd, Bob Ezra, and we started a company called Seventh Level. And that's where I got into the tech space, because I saw I saw interactive entertainment coming together. So we started Seventh Level, and that's probably one of my, favorite things. That company, we took that public. It was a NASDAQ company. And one of my biggest claims, my favorite thing that I've ever done is I directed and produced, along with a co-directed and produced, the world's first interactive cartoon.
I get to talk about
that. Was fun times. Yeah. It's called Toonland. Starred Howie Mandel.
Right.
We sold 11 million units of that.
Wow. Yeah. So what was so unique and special about that?
Well, because remember, those were the days we were on Windows machines that were 386 25 megahertz machines with 4 mega RAM. That was it, right? You had 4, and so you had to figure out. Yeah, we didn't know how
plug it
interactive entertainment was just starting, right? So it was very pioneering, innovative time to be in that game.
Yeah, plug it into the phone line with the.
Well, even when I started that, there was no phone lines. There was really no phone modems. That came a little bit later. As
Oh,
we got-
okay.
It was
Wow.
CD-ROMs, you know, so
innovative.
CD-ROMs, you put them in your
Right.
computer and that kind of stuff. And
What do
so,
How
you think at that
innovative.
point in your career you decided to veer off into tech? Like what was the universe telling you at that time?
well, you know, again, it's like I try to stay up on where trends are going. You know, it's really important to
Right.
keep an idea on trends and where the market is. So I constantly, I feel like I'm in this space. I'm pretty close to the market because I follow it so closely. At that time, you know, I was in an entertainment space. I had done my first CD-ROM, which was it was called Music Bites. And Music Bites was really, it was music so somebody could put for a presentation. So on your computer, you had no way to add music to a PowerPoint, right? So this was a disc of just musical cues and songs and things like that you could use as a presentation music behind, because that was just starting to happen. So I saw that this market of CD-ROM and where it was going, and I started hanging out in the whole cyberpunk scene, like all these guys that were like writing code like in their garages and stuff. It was like really a trip. It was so early. I remember going to a conference, one of the early Windows conferences, and it was in the size of you know, it was like in a Holiday Inn in one room, one banquet room, a complete computer trade show. It was Windows things. And we saw that I just saw it as the future. So I just dove everything into that and started hanging in that scene. That was funny because there was there were a handful of us musicians. It was myself, Todd Rundgren was in there early. Todd Rundgren and Thomas Dolby was another one that was early in the kind of the tech space. And now I was hanging out with Timothy Leary, believe it or not. And Timothy.
Oh, I totally believe you were hanging out with Timothy Leary.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, he was all hanging out. He was all part of that digital be-ins we'd go to in San Francisco. And it was a very innovative time because all of this stuff was starting to break. So it was very exciting. I mean, it was a very exciting time.
But that's what I mean. And just really being attracted to it or having it pull you in right from the start and being able to kind of get a rough idea of where it went. And then to have the honor in a way of watching this unfold year after year after year and expand and grow and evolve to what it is today.
Yeah. Well, I was real early, which was interesting is I was probably, like I said, there was a couple of us in the music industry. We were the only guys that were looking at this space in that time. And actually, one of the things I'm really proud of, there's a big book that came out. It's called The 50 Pioneers of Multimedia. And I'm in that book.
Yes.
With guys like, you know, Jared Lanier and you know, all these great and very incredible, you know, humans that have done things. So that was a very interesting time. I mean, I really enjoyed those times of being there. Now, obviously, taking a company public, was a very interesting process, you know, to go through all the bankers and this stuff and go out and raise, you know, we on that, we raised about 80 million.
Wow.
Revenue for that. And it was very, very fun time. It was very exciting time.
Very exciting time. So with all of this excitement, I can't help but ask you how you are dealing with the pandemic. How is it? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, well, for me, it was this, you know, I mean, we were for Think, which was just going to be our second year, which we were really getting ready to rock. I mean, this was going to be our biggest year. We were not only were we working on a bunch of live events, because Think is an immersive entertainment company, because we knew we couldn't sell music. So what can you sell? So we were building and doing things, and we just finished doing 40 shows in a 360-degree immersive dome where people lay down and you'd watch this thing. And
I would totally love that.
Oh no, it's fantastic. We did a Think Floyd show, so we were doing Floyd, and so all-star band, myself, Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction, and Norwood Fisher from Fishbone, and Kenny Olson from Kid Rock's band. We all had this great band, and we were doing it. We were getting ready to do Jazz Fest this year. We were going back to Europe again, back to Budapest. We had all thing, and things were really rocking. We were in the midst of putting up, working with partners out of Toronto, out of Montreal, that were people that were early on in the Cirque du Soleil days. They had just built this $15 million 1,600 seat immersive theater that we were
Get
just
out.
we're going to just put up at the Queen Mary, and everything was going great. Then I wake up and, you know, the COVID thing and things are shut down. And I like,
my
okay.
goodness.
But then, you know, going back to my philosophy, the only thing that's real is what's happening right now.
Absolutely.
I just realized, I said, all those things that were happening were just things that I was thinking was going to happen.
Yes.
And maybe something horrible would have happened in there. And maybe this is just, I'm just thankful that it didn't happen. So I basically said at that point, well, going back to entrepreneurship, whenever there's a lot of confusion and a lot of things that are, you know, crazy, that's where the opportunities lie, right? If you can look beyond that. So I just started going, well, first of all, I know technology is going to be there. This two-way stuff is going to happen. So I started just thinking about what are the new opportunities. And that's when I started putting together the Living business model, and then built the team. So we went and I put a world-class team around this business. And I just said, you know what? Hey, I'm sitting here drinking water. All's good. I'm okay. I'm very thankful, you know, and not let it take me down.
We're all here together, right?
That's right. And then I got to meet all you guys. And I mean, there's all these things that, you know, it all comes out of this. So it's, you know, I didn't look at it as a bad thing. And I mean, it's horrible, the things that have happened and the people that have suffered dearly. And, you know, I'm just looking at all the people that are going to suffer. I mean, I'm more worried about the shutdown than I am the virus, to be truthful. I just feel that there's going to be much more destruction and devastation from that than the virus ever gave us.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because you can't lock down a country like this for a year and all the businesses
and not have repercussions from it.
Not have repercussions.
Yeah.
I mean, the sad part for me right now is I'm seeing musician friends living on the street. They've hit the street already.
Scott, I was on a show out of Memphis, right? Rick Cheddar. And that's one of the things he was talking about. You know, all the old jazz musicians, so they've been able to hang on no matter what. They're on the street now, and nobody thinks about that. You're right. You're right.
No, I can't even tell you. Right. And because remember, there's a whole economy of people that just kind of live off of working clubs.
Absolutely.
And, you know, they make enough, and they, you know, they kind of have this thing, and that's been just devastated. There's been no place for that.
Not only from the pandemic, but also from computer generated music too has been taken away. A lot of the work.
Yeah, and that's even going to get more and more. I mean, now they've got, you know, there's a site you can go to and say, I got a film score. You plug it in and you say, give me a John Williams score. And 20 minutes later, you have a complete score to your film, right?
Yeah.
So we're seeing a lot of disruption, but then at the same time, I'm seeing a lot of artists that are now starting to do the things we're doing. Like we're doing two-way streams, and they're starting to figure that out. I'm a little bit sad though. I just heard in England, they're now going to start charging musicians to do a live stream. So if you want to do a live stream up to 500 people, it's $25. Wow. If you go to, I mean, then you got to start paying to do those.
I wonder if they can end up doing that here. I wonder, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. I think what we're seeing right now is a whole lot of things that people didn't realize is happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how the government's shifting around and what we're trying to do right now. So.
Yeah, Scott, I cannot thank you enough. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. Yeah. But I just want to say,
I don't want it to happen. It isn't so.
But firstly, my brother Rick has been a huge Pink Floyd fan for decades, and he wanted me to tell you hello, and so you could just say hello to him, to my brother Rick.
Brother Rick, where were you? Why aren't you here today with us? Come on.
Where is your brother Rick?
Nice to meet you, Rick.
Nice to meet you. In Indiana. He's in Indiana.
Hi, Rick.
Indiana. Yeah, there you go.
Yep. But you're watching If These Walls Could Talk with hosts Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, and our special guest is the one and only, the incredible Scott Page. I don't even know what label to put. You know, musician.
Fabulous. How about the label? It's just fabulous.
Just amazing.
Really.
Just a friend.
Amazing.
Friends.
Amazing.
Out with friends.
An amazing human being who knows how to live life.
Yep.
How about that?
You gotta remember, it goes really fast. Remember, time is an illusion, right?
Yes,
Because you blink,
absolutely.
you're 50 years old. You blink, you're on your deathbed. So it's like,
Yep, exactly.
Live
like
it
that.
well. That's
So
living
now-
in the moment and live it well.
So now,
That's
how
it.
can people find out more about Scott Page?
I mean, all my social is all IAM Scott Page, IAM Scott Page, and
I am
you
Scott
can
Page.
find me on all of those things.
All right.
And you can, if you want to find out about Think, just Google Think EXP, and then you'll see there's videos of our live show, all of our
lot of
dome
stuff on
shows
it.
and the band and stuff and interviews, and you can kind of get a handle. But yes, thank you very much for that.
Well, I can tell you have got so many ideas and so much more to come, and I cannot wait to see
Yeah,
everything
it's going to
unfold.
be exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Wendy, you're going to be part of our show, and maybe we'll
I'm
get
very
Tim
excited.
part of it too. We need to get you guys in it because all we want to do is get back to living, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's
Yep.
what it's about. I'm going to hold you
Absolutely.
to that too.
I am. Yeah, so I shamed you here in the public, so I know you'll be there when.
It takes a lot more than this to shame us. Oh, I said it.
Scott,
You're
you
delightful. Thank
this
you.
was so incredible. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for taking some time and
Oh,
sharing.
absolutely. Anytime for you guys, anything, man. I'm
Thank you
really
for
thankful.
that tuned in today to watch If These Walls Could Talk. We'll be back next week.
Yes, we will. Right here at Pangea in New York City.
Okay.
Thank you,
All
Scott.
right. All right. Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.
Everyone.
Social.